So guys, what we have done in the first part is to cover the whole mechanical adjustment of the gimbal. What we're now going to do in the second part is to cover the electronics, meaning the Basecam Alexmos controller, as most of you guys are using those devices in your rigs. I will cover the whole calibration of the IMU, which is very important. I will cover the PIDs and also going into a small deep dive of what the PIDs really mean, so you understand what to tune and why you're tuning it. I will cover the adjustment of the motors. I will not cover any kind of RC settings because I think this is really a trivial task according to my opinion. I will also explain for what the different menu points are standing for, and that should give you a pretty comprehensive overview of how to tune your Alexmos controller so that the camera in the end is very stable in the air. So what's basically done here is I already started the simple BCG GUI. In this case it's version 2.4 B7. Make sure that you always have the latest version. If you have an older version, the application will complain, so you need to download the latest version. Generally, what you see here is the USB connection. It's basically a USB to serial converter. Once you plug that into your computer, it should automatically install the necessary drivers, at least on my Windows 8.1 it's like that. And this is precisely what we're going to do. Then once the driver is installed on the computer, it gets a COM port assigned for the serial connection, serial over USB connection. And what you basically do is then just press connect here. So now it's connected, and I move the camera a little bit closer to the screen so you can really see what we are going to do here. First we remove the sensor, and normally it's screwed in with a tiny screw on the bottom or wherever you mount this. We need to remove it to put it on a box to do all the 6 axes. And let's put this a little bit into the front. Then I have this nice KD box here. That's excellent for what we want to do now. What we are doing is just tape the sensor onto the top, like I am doing it. Make sure that it's really in the middle. Some degrees error is not a tragedy, but this is where we start from. We're going to hit calibrate acceleration. That's this point here. Hope you can see it in the video. It's important to see both things, and we're going to start this. And note also the blinking LEDs in the back. I hope you can see this as well. So we did the first axis, then we go to the second axis, third axis, fourth, fifth, and last but not least, the sixth. So you don't need to write them after each axis into the system. The system is doing that by itself. And what we're going to do now is remount the sensor and then do the whole PID setting, the motor setting, and so forth. Now what we need to do is determine the correct settings for the sensor. In this case, as it's mounted on the bottom, it's -Z and the axis is X. We write that down to the system. Now the important point in order to make sure that you really have the right settings is you lift the gimbal, you look at it from the back. Then if you just tilt the roll axis, and you can see my screen, it's tilting in the exact same direction. Let me pull the camera a little bit back so we can really see what I'm doing with the gimbal here. And you keep your focus on the instruments on the left side. You see roll going to right, to left. Then we pull up the pitch, pull down the pitch, and then we're going to rotate the yaw. And you see this is working perfectly. If I'm rotating to right, our instrument will display that we are rotating it to the right. This is a little bit of an experiment if you really not have adjusted that before. So you have, I think, 36 possibilities or 37 on the sensor mounting, respectively the calibration. So that is the first part that really needs to work perfectly. Remember, always look at it from the back, and then if you turn stuff, it must be reflected equally in the application. So before we go into the PID calibration, we'll try to auto-calibrate the motors, but first of all we'll enable the third axis, which is the yaw board. Write that to the gimbal. And then usually what's not working is that even if I click here auto calibration, that the number of poles and the state of the motor is recognized correctly. However, we can do that, but before we go into that, it is now time to connect the battery to the board. So far it has been entirely powered by the USB connector. Now we're connecting the battery, which is in this case a 3S battery, to have full power enabled. So zooming a little bit out here that we can really see the full picture. I'm lifting the gimbal now in my hand and really trying to get this calibrated for the motors by just clicking the auto button. And now let's see what happens. Again, this takes a while. But you can clearly see how the system is trying to find out which motors are used. Are they inverted or not? So the auto calibration is done. What we see now on the application is that it says number of poles, for example for roll or 23, number of poles for pitch or 14, number of poles for yaw 14. This is all not correct. It very rarely happens that these parameters are displayed correctly. So in terms of the number of poles, you just need to have a look at the technical description of your motors. And in this case, I know that all my motors are 22 pole motors. So I'm going to input that into the application here. I also know that, for example, the yaw needs to be inverted, and then write this back. So now, before we go into the PID tuning, I highly recommend that we only tune one axis at a time. So I'm going to set roll and yaw to 0, and then we start with the tuning of the pitch axis. Writing back. Do not forget to write that back, otherwise the parameters won't be stored. So if we're going now into the PID tuning, there are some things you need to know regarding how those variables play together. And in order to make that understandable, I've made a quick drawing, which you can see here. So on the very top you see a condition is always taken as an input, goes then to the proportional, integral and derivative items. Then there is the control process, since this is a closed system. And then at the end it's the sensor, the IMU, that determines if the condition is met or not, or if there is any additional correction needed. So let's assume in general there is a probably 30% or 30-degree deviation to where the gimbal should point to or should move to. The controller gives basically a signal to correct it. So the signal is represented as the error. The error is then multiplied by P, resulting in a signal that goes to the motors. The motors will start correcting the error, but the error will get smaller over time. So, for example, after a certain point in time, you will reach 15-degree deviation or 15-degree error, and then obviously the output will get also smaller. In the end, there will not be enough power to correct the last degrees as the amount of power is too weak. And this is basically the point where the I value kicks in. The I value makes sure that the output power is never too weak to do the correction, and the I and the P are therefore together responsive for that correction. What happens now is that if the I value is too high, the error gets overcorrected. So this is typically resulting in oscillation of the gimbals, in oscillation of the motors, and there you see that the whole stuff is too high. So at the very end, the D value kicks in for the dampening. And what the D value does is just making the impulses smoother from the P and I. And this is also the reason why we always start with P and I values before going to the D values. So now we go into the PID tuning. As said before, first we're going to tune the pitch axis. What we currently see now, and we're going to be operating only on the pitch axis here. So I zoom out a little bit that you can see the gimbal as well in one picture. So what we're going to do is raise the P, raise the I until, or just one step before it is about to oscillate. What is also very helpful is a tab called real-time data, embedded in the simple BGC GUI. And what you can see now is that I turned on this real-time data, and we see very slight vibrations. So we raise the p-value here on the pitch axis. not too much. I would say like 17 is good. Write that back, or even go probably to 20. Write that back. Now again, we're only tuning the pitch axis at the moment. If I move my gimbal, you can clearly see it's working. Then if we look on the real-time data, there's very, very minor vibrations here visible. I scaled this also up to the very top. This can be seen here. Very, very minor vibrations. And what we then going to do on the power pitch is currently at 50. We're going to raise that, I would say, to at least 100 initially and see if we can go even higher. Let's see what the gimbal does then. Starts to oscillate. That's not good. So that's a sign that this is maybe too high. Going back to probably 80 here on the power. Looks better. Still vibrations, this means we need to decrease the P. Again, quickly cross-check on the real-time data. It's not visible here now, but in certain positions there are vibrations, so I'm decreasing the pitch P slightly to approximately 17 now. Write it back. Then let's see how it works now. Very good movement. Increasing the power now a little bit. Trying to go up to 100 if possible. Then let's see what this thing does then. That is a good movement. Huh? So then we go to the roll axis, starting initially with 50 power. Write this back. Double the P from 10 to 20. Write it back and see what happens now if I just hold the gimbal here. So clearly what we can see now is that it has not enough power. So contrary to the pitch axis, where you can clearly feel that there is power holding the camera steady, on the roll axis there is not enough. So we need to increase the power. I would say go at least to 120 here. Write this back. And what we can see now is that there is very fast movement. So from the perspective of power, this is now holding up. But there is too much oscillation. So if you look at the real-time data, we can clearly see that there is a lot of oscillation. You can also see that the gimbal is vibrating. We try to go up a little bit with the D value, the dampening. See how it does now, and it's much better. So also, you can see yaw is not enabled now, it's just pitch and roll. Roll is almost perfect. If we look at real-time data. And if I'm holding it still some minor vibrations, so we probably decrease pitch a little bit. Write that back. Go a little bit up with power, maybe to 140. Let's really trial and error these things here. And then see on the roll axis. It is almost perfect. Checking on the real-time data, very minor oscillations, so that's good. So last but not least, we still have the yaw axis to do. I'm slightly increasing the power. I would say go to 100, 102, 100. That's okay. Then just quickly check how the yaw is now doing. Enough power, not oscillating. So already this should be very fine. Probably increasing P just a notch here. What we can see now is that yaw is a little bit vibrating. So I'm going back to 10 here, write down the values in the board. And I think if I'm holding that with my hands, still some high oscillations, so increasing D to 11. Not read right, I wanted to do. And now we're pretty much spot on with that thing. No more vibrations. Works like a dream. Let's put this where it belongs. Just testing if yaw is really working. Absolutely awesome. So that's basically it for the tuning so far. I think we can do a real life test. Let's do a quick check on real-time data at last. Zoom a little bit in so you can see that they're really only minor vibrations. So the system is completely set up. I'm going to turn off the motors quickly to show you the settings. Back to basic. So what we have now is like 18 on P. We remained pretty much all at the default numbers. We have some dampening on the roll and yaw. Power 140, 100, 100. What we could additionally do is give some extra power if needed. And I'm going to 20 extra power here on roll and pitch. Then just turning on the gimbal again to see if that is still performing well. Still holding up very good. Yeah, also perfect. So focus on the remaining stuff. Turn off the motors again. In the advanced tab, there are some things that you can change with respect to RC subtrim. So if you want to do very minor adjustments to where the camera is pointing to, RC settings pretty much explains itself. You need to clearly describe which ports you're going to use for the output of your receiver. Then you should assign at least a switch to to choose the different profiles. In that case, we only worked with profile 1, so only one profile, you can save and load them. I would recommend to work with at least 3 profiles. For example, follow yaw, then dual operator, probably follow yaw and roll. And you are also able to determine the minimum angle, maximum angle, and the speed once you move the sticks, once you have this, the receiver connected. Then, if you do have a so-called menu button attached to the Alexmos, you can define here what's going to happen. Follow mode, also you can enable that and do some adjustments. And the real-time data is mainly for calibrating the whole stuff, similarly used to how we used it before. Firmware upgrade pretty much explains itself. So with that, we're going to do a very quick live test with the gimbal Sony NEX5T mounted to it to see if this is really working properly.